I'll put my Fanatic headband on to make me at least a little bit happy.
Yeah, you need that because we're what are we like 25, 6, whatever. We're less than a month away. We'll say that from pitchers and catchers
away
reporting.
from the start of spring training, so
Like
24 days, and yeah, we need it because let's just put this out up front. The as we all expected, the Eagles got bounced out of the playoffs very early. You and I, we knew that was coming.
Yeah.
It wasn't a shock. It was a shock on how it happened, and that's what sucks.
Not even that. No, it to me, at least not to me.
I say on the score anyway. I say like
the
32-9 felt like a 50-0 to me, and I thought that was at least. I honestly thought that game would have been a touchdown or 10 points.
Was not a shock to me. I literally told one of my coworkers is a huge Bucs fan, and was debating on whether or not she should mess with me about the game prior to the game. She's like, I don't even know. She goes, honestly, I want to talk trash, but I don't know if I should, considering your current mental state. And I was like, dude, I said, congratulations on the bye week. You won the NFC South and you got a bye week in the first round of the playoffs. What more? How better could it work out for you?
Yeah.
And we talked about it. We talked about it a little bit as the season was winding down. And we had said at one point, we said, man, it would take an epic collapse for the Eagles not to finish with the number 2 or 3 seed. And holy shit, did we see an epic collapse.
Oh.
The worst collapse since the 1986 Jets.
Yeah. Actually, you know what? And I'll baseball term it. Let's go back to the 2007 New York Mets.
Yeah. And the 2008 New York Mets and the 2009 New York Mets.
But no, I mean, it was crazy. And look, we talked about this just over the midway point when they were riding high, 10-1. That Jets loss withheld there. Those wins, for the most part, were ugly, and everything about the season felt ugly. And it was just, at some point you felt like the wheels were going to come off, but you also felt like, you know what, they've won ugly games, they're going to keep winning ugly games. That's kind of how I felt about it. I didn't think there would be that complete just nosedive into a black hole. And, now I have a feeling that they're not going to win more than 4 games next year. Like, that's where I'm at. I know that's bad to say, but it's that awful.
I've gone back and forth with it. I'm not quite as pessimistic as you about next season, pending what they do going forward. News broke today. Sean Desai fired. Matt Patricia no longer with the organization.
Good.
So that's in the right direction.
Yeah, and that's the whole Matt Patricia thing from the start was an absolute joke.
Yeah.
So good riddance.
Now, Brian Johnson's still with the team. Simple reason for that is he's getting interviews, and the Eagles stand to get compensation in the form of 3rd-round picks this year and next year from whoever signs him. And he's was getting looks at offense coordinator and head coach last year. So this is just a continuation of that.
I'm just curious as to who in their right mind would say, oh, you know what? This is going to work.
They're putting it on Nick. So here's the deal.
Fair enough.
The word from the league is that Brian Johnson is still a highly regarded quarterback whisperer. For the work he did in Shane Steichen's offense in 2022 with Jalen Hurts, turning him into an MVP candidate. What they're saying about him now is that he could be kind of like what we talked about with Nick, where he's a leader of men, but not necessarily a great offensive mind or defensive mind. He's a leader of men, and he can get through to quarterbacks. Where it kind of falls apart for me is the getting through to quarterbacks and seeing what the regression that Jalen had this year. But that said, I kind of also feel like part of the regression that Jalen had this year was the combination of the lack of a coherent offense from Nick and from Brian Johnson. No one knows for sure how much of that offense was Brian Johnson and how much of that offense was Nick Sirianni. But we can all tell that it wasn't a good offensive scheme, that they're running a high school offense primarily from shotgun. They ran a record 600 and some bubble screens for negative yardage.
Yeah, I saw that. I saw that. And it was put in meme form, and I was like, "There's no way this is right." And then I did the research. I was like, "Holy crap, this is actually correct."
When you run 600 plus plays of the same type and it results in negative yardage for the year, you know that what you were doing was doomed to fail from the start.
Right.
There
You
is
have enough of a sample in the first, I don't know, maybe 50 or 100.
right. Think about it this way. If you had a running back who had more than 2 games worth of carries, so we'll say 60 carries, right? And they had negative yardage to show for those 60 carries, you're not running that running back's never seeing the field again.
No. No.
So why is it that an offensive scheme, and I guess you can't really scrap an entire offensive scheme in the middle of a season, kind of like what we saw with the defense, where you can't scrap an entire defensive game plan, 10 weeks into a season, 11 weeks into a season, and have it make any difference. You're just confusing your players and muddying the waters. So, they couldn't scrap the offensive game planning, but God, maybe we stop calling bubble screens.
Yeah. Actually, and it's funny you say that because you played fantasy football about as long as I have. And you typically, you look at your roster and you always end up with that running back who has 15 carries for 40 yards or 20 carries for 50 yards. Yeah, there's really, weird things that you see from time to time. And, anomalies sometimes. And the next week they run at 100. But then once they start putting together weeks like that 2, 3, 4 weeks in a row, guess what happens? As you just said, they get replaced. And, then obviously, as a fantasy owner, you get gutted because you're like, oh, I wasted this high draft pick for this. Saying this in the perspective of the Eagles, the fact that they let that go on as long as they did, like mathematically does not make sense at all. I mean, we've seen football games time and time again, Eagles involved or not. But schemes get changed mid-game sometimes. It just happens. But to carry the same crap on all season long and have no results,
right?
I don't know. And that to me is like, okay, where do you go from that? Is that Sirianni not showing accountability? Is that Brian Johnson just being a complete dumpster fire from coach, coordinator? What's going on here? Is Jalen being a pill here with certain things?
I honestly, so here's the thing. I don't think that this, some of it falls on Jalen, but you and I both watched. I mean, I watched every game this year. The only thing that I really saw, so Jalen they weren't running enough routes where it was a quick developing play. They were running so much just vertical offense or a bubble screen. And so they weren't giving Jalen the looks that he needed as far as wide receiver routes. They weren't doing the quick slants over the middle like they were last year. A.J. Brown on a quick slant across the middle, or even 2 crossing routes, where they're kind of bumping the receiver. You can't run a pick, but bumping the coverage off or confusing his own coverage, stuff like that. Like, they weren't doing enough of that. They didn't have any motion pre-snap. What you saw was what you got. And they were, as usual for an Eagles offense, they were abandoning the run.
Yeah, which, oh, God. It pains me. Like, they just could not commit. And we had DeAndre Swift looking like, Mr. Superstar, Pro Bowl, MVP almost, with a couple of very solid games early in the season, running through everybody.
Right.
And then just can't commit to the run. And what's even crazy to me, I just boggles my mind, is when they would commit to the run, it's like, let's just give it to Gainwell.
Right.
Let's just, we'll change the pace of Boston Scott. Like, they weren't even giving Swift any opportunity. Now, granted, look, I know Swift has a high history of injury. We know that. That's just how he is. However, as far as I could tell, he was healthy as all get out. And let's not even get started on Rashad Penny, who they signed but did absolutely nothing with.
Fucking Rashad Penny.
Like, you have a bruiser, basically, who's a known force, and again, to me, should have been your number 2 to Swift, but that's neither here nor there. And you did nothing with him all season.
Right.
He just rotted. It's like you basically kept him on your bench. You put him in, he was doing some special team stuff, whatever. But you kept him on your bench to just keep him from the other team. And it's like, what are you doing?
Right.
Such a waste.
There was so much wasted potential on this team overall. So here's something interesting because we're railing on the offense. The offense was a huge problem, but obviously the bigger issue was the defense. And here's an interesting fact that just came up recently. Per TJ Edwards himself, the Eagles never offered him a contract.
Of course not.
So let's talk about TJ Edwards for a minute. TJ Edwards, undrafted free agent linebacker. The Eagles got him. No one saw anything in this guy. And the Eagles took him and developed him into a Pro Bowl, all-pro linebacker. He was second in the league in tackles this year for the Chicago Bears. Did not offer him a fucking contract. Let that sink in for a minute.
That's sick.
Everybody loves Reed Blankenship. Well, not so much anymore because he kind of faded down the stretch. But think about it this way. He was the only fucking defensive back who played pretty much every game.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm not too upset with Reed Blankenship. I think once we get a good coordinator in there, he'll be fine. But everybody was kind of like in love with him. He was Reed Blankenship before Reed Blankenship was Reed Blankenship. And the Eagles just let him go for nothing. Stupid. You go out, you get a defensive coordinator who doesn't pressure. You're running this same Vic Fangio fucking defense. And what did that do for you in the Super Bowl? Do we remember?
Well, we didn't win. And that's what I remember.
Vic Fangio was a special consultant in that Super Bowl, right? Yeah. Okay, that's what I thought. So, you've got this defense that if the personnel is utilized correctly, they should be getting home. But you've got linebackers drop. You've got Hassan Reddick, an edge fucking rusher, dropping back in pass coverage. You've got James Bradbury, who, Jesus, he should not have been on the field anymore.
No.
There should have been a point where you had seen enough and you bench his ass. I don't care how much he's making. He was not the best option for this team. He was not. He should have been on the bench. You have so many rookie corners and young corners and defensive backs that you could have put in his place. There was no reason for him to be on the field anymore. Sidney Brown was a bright spot, and he ends up blowing out his knee on that fucking Meadowlands turf.
Yep.
There's just, Jesus, there were so many issues with this defense. First and foremost, the whole not utilizing your personnel to their proper potential, not building the system around what you have in-house, squeezing square pegs in the round holes to try to fit your system. And that's not how you run a defense in the NFL. You can't do it.
And what was their one, to me, strength, at least somewhat early on, and then the wheels started coming off the bus. My God, they just could not stop the run at all, particularly toward the end. Arizona, to me, that game will stick in my head because James Conner and that crew made them just look silly.
Mm-hmm.
And it was like any high school in America probably could have held, the Cardinals to less yards on the ground. Yeah. Kyler Murray was made to look like an MVP. It was ridiculous. And I think we all knew well before that point, but to me, it was like, my God, this is why they should take their playoff spot away.
Yeah. And the problem,
they're going to get absolutely smoked. And I didn't really think the game against the Buccaneers was going to be a smoke game just for the sheer fact that the Buccaneers were not known let's not kid ourselves here. I love Mike Evans, like Rashad White. I think they've got some good talent there. But you're still running Baker Mayfield here, so it's like you're going to win based off defense and maybe 2-3 touchdown type things, not that 32-9 shellacking. I honestly didn't think that was going to happen.
No, I was fairly certain that was going to happen. My biggest thing too was, like you said, the run defense, which again, the defense had become so simplified between switching from Desai to Patricia. Which, look, I agreed with the switch to Patricia at the time simply because it couldn't get any worse, right? Well, holy shit, was I?
Yeah.
I was 100% wrong, and I apologize to Sean Desai. Maybe he should have gotten a better shake, but at the end of the day, they had to do something on that defense, and they couldn't replace every player. And he apparently wasn't willing to change his tactics, so they did what they thought they should do. They used Matt Patricia, who again has failed everywhere he's been, except for when he was being carried by the Bill Belichick defense. Which, by the way, remember the Super Bowl that the Eagles won, where they played against the Patriots, and it was a record number of offense overall because Nick Foles dominated that defense.
Yep.
And it was, that was led by Matt Patricia.
Yeah.
So we should have known.
Oh, I think we did know, and that was the ultimate problem. Plus, the other thing too, and we talk about clubhouse guys. Not only that, he was kind of a poison pill in that regard too, because you already had a history with Darius Slay. You had some other known things going on. So not only the fact that you don't know what you're doing, now you're like screwing up, the mentality of other guys that are already in the room. Right. And it just makes it that much worse, right. And I'm not going to speak to his play in the subsequent, I'm going to get the surgery at this point in time and come back for the last game of the season, blah, 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 whatever. But you're still, screwing with the mental state at this point of a player or multiple players, because now you're in that position of power when it's like they're already questioning why you brought him in the first place.
Yeah.
And now you're basically saying, no, you know what? Yeah, you're in charge of the defense. All good. Like, come on.
Yeah, man. It's a damn joke. And
you and I have texted about this, though. I do want to bring up this point, and I think we're in agreement here. And I'm just curious to see like how far you're willing to go with it, so to speak. So it appears that they'll clean house. They've already started doing that defensively, and I think we're going to see that on the other side too. However, Sirianni's still going to be the man for next year. Mm-hmm. But how much of a leash does he get? Because now he's on the hot seat.
I think it's really going to depend on, number one, what the team looks like going into week one, health-wise. It's going to depend on how healthy they stay throughout the season. And I would say at the midway point of the season, where they're trending.
Okay.
If they're trending towards a playoff spot and they look like they fixed some of the issues that have plagued them this year, I think his seat starts to cool down considerably. If they're kind of wavering a little bit and they're just getting middling returns at that point, I think the heat's turned up. And I think it would depend on how they finish out the season, whether or not he finishes the season as the head coach.
Yeah. I think that's a fair point. I think you're right. I think that's exactly the way to look at it. If they are trending toward a playoff spot, I think he does finish up through. And because at this point, if you look at it that way, if they do have some level of success under his leadership, and they do end up with a playoff spot, regardless of how far they get in the playoffs, obviously that's not all on him. Then okay. My thing is, though, is you come out of the gates and let's say you drop the first 4 games of the season and they're ugly. He's out the door to me.
Oh, I could see that. And especially what's going to be especially telling is who comes in as the offensive and defensive coordinators.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think you made a point to me on this one. This makes a lot of sense if you want to kind of spread that knowledge to the masses.
Yeah, so I mean, look at it this way. This season, they weren't afraid to hedge their bets at defensive coordinator and have Patricia there as a backup. So when you look at your offensive and defensive coordinators, essentially, what are they? Well, if your head coach is sick or has to miss a game or get suspended, either your offensive coordinator or your defense coordinator steps up as your de facto head coach. Well, 4 games into the season, or before they even start the season, look at who your head coach and your defense coordinator and your offensive coordinator are. My bet is one of them is going to be an experienced former head coach or head coaching candidate. And then he's going to come in here. And if Nick, like you said, if Nick completely shits the bed and they start off 0-4, he's gone.
So you're telling me they're going to bring in Rich Kotite?
If they bring back Rich Kotite, I'll only be okay with it if, like, I get to date his daughter. Like, aside from that, no Kotites need to be anywhere near Philadelphia. They're not even allowed in the tri-state area. They got to stay out of the Delaware Valley. If they come into the Delaware Valley, they immediately get sent to, like, Costa Rica or something. Like, just deported. Just, you're going. Bye. Or no, we can send them back to Cleveland.
It was funny. I'm thinking of, like, you say that, like, head coach, history things, and it just reminded. I don't know why these names pop in my head, but I think of, like, ex people, and I was like, Wade Phillips, the Dallas guy, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, he's still around, right? He's now in the. So we're going to be doing a full blown. That's why I like to do little teasers like this. We will do a full blown Jeltz on the United Football League, because we have done some XFL stuff before on our Noise Brigade, back in the day. So we have to do a spring football league episode centric one here, realizing that it's Philly sports podcast based, and we'll talk about how the Philadelphia Stars no longer exist. But anyway, that's neither here nor there.
Hey,
but I really wonder, though, in the terms of what you say, though, about the Eagles pulling these possible ex-head coaches in, how far that goes as far as who they're really looking at.
Real quick, I got to interrupt you because something just sprung through my head when you mentioned that. Where's Blob?
Oh, that's right.
What did they do with Blob?
Oh my God.
Is he gonna wait? So is he gonna pull a Yuppie and go from the Stars to the Flyers? Because remember when Yuppie used to be the Expos mascot, and now he's with the Canadians.
That's possible, but the Flyers already have Gritty. I mean,
yeah, but fucking think about that. Blob and Gritty in the same fucking stadium.
That's a good point. That's a good point.
And Gritty could fucking train Blob. They're both orange.
Yeah. That's a good point.
All right, sorry, but yeah,
no, that was good. That was good. That was a good. I like that one. No, but I mean, I'm curious. So, like, how far do they go? Do they obviously? You're looking at people that have had levels of success, particularly playoff experience. Because look, let's not kid ourselves here. The Eagles are still 1 year removed from the Super Bowl, being NFC champions, whatever. So you're not obviously going to go with inexperience. You're looking at top flight guys here. But I am curious, like, how far out of the bounds do they go? And I know we have names being tossed around that I don't want any part of, but
Jim Bob Cooter.
Well,
look, he may be a great offensive coordinator, a good up and coming coach. I can't have a coach on the Philadelphia Eagles be named Jim Bob Cooter.
I would have thought that guy would have been the next head coach of Alabama after Nick Saban retired, but man,
right?
it would have made the most sense.
Yeah, I was thinking Alabama or Arkansas, one of those hick ass college. He's Indianapolis right now. He's with Shane Steichen in Indianapolis, so that could be a way they look. I could see Frank Reich being brought in as a not necessarily an offensive coordinator, but an offensive quality control coach, and or an offensive consultant.
Frank Reich was like my first choice, honestly.
And honestly, he's not. I don't want him. I don't want him on this staff with the possibility. I don't want him to be the offensive coordinator, maybe offensive coordinator, but I don't want him to be like the in case of emergency, this is our head coach.
That makes a lot of sense. Yeah, I see that. Right. I want the expertise.
Yes.
But I don't know that I agree with that. It's like I don't think he'd be the next guy that I would say, you know what, Nick, you're out. Frank, you're in. I don't see that either.
So that would be my concern with him. I kind of, as far as defensive coordinator, I kind of wanted Wink Martindale, the former Giants defensive coordinator. But looking at their numbers and where they were this season, I think we kind of have a different view of them because the Giants always play the Eagles tough. And all season, pretty much all any of us wanted was to have an aggressive defense and to see the sack numbers go up and see the blitzes return to the defense, which that's, we didn't really blitz much under Gannon, but we had a league leading 70 sacks.
Right.
So, the defensive minded folks among us were seeing his defense and like, oh man, I kind of like that defense. It's an aggressive ass defense. They really get after the quarterback. But at the same time, we were number 30 in points allowed per year, or this past season. They were 26.
Yeah, that's not much of a.
Now, I don't think that the talent matches up the same as far as our front four and their front four, but the rest of the defense, I feel like they had better linebacking core than we did. And I feel like their defensive backs were probably a little bit better than ours. If for no other reason, then they were healthy and they were playing with if I remember correctly, they played with pretty much the same defensive backs all year.
Yeah, that's the thing too. It's like there was consistency there.
Right.
Which the Eagles did not have, particularly in both, obviously, linebackers and DBs. I don't know. It's interesting to me. I am just kind of curious as to see how this all shakes out. Like I said, I will remain glass half empty on this one because of the way the season ended. It was that bad. They honestly probably shouldn't even won the one game against the Giants that they did.
No, they shouldn't.
So it very well could have been just this complete train wreck of losing all these games in a row instead of just barely winning the one. That's why I think I feel like the way I do. And I hate this. Watching the end of the Buccaneers game, and as long as we've recorded our sports stuff here, whether it's on Jeltz here or the stuff we did on our Noise Brigade stuff years ago, I was always in Jalen's corner. You know that from day one.
Yeah.
When we did a very early episode that involved an Eagles season preview, and I was all gung-ho about making sure that Jalen was the man. And boy, did he prove me right for the last 2-3 football seasons. And then watching the Buccaneers game, I was like, crap. Like, not only do I want these coordinators gone, and I'm also like in the camp of Sirianni, you're out the door. Now it's like, is Jalen the right guy? And I hate to even think that. But it just, but seeing the way things fell apart, it's like, my God, is there anyone that can make a correct football decision here?
So, and here's the thing with Jalen. I think by the end of the season, Jalen was questioning if he looked at his right hand, if it was really his right hand. I think that the failures of the offensive staff and the failures of the offense made him second guess everything.
Mm.
The point where he didn't know what to do. They had him so screwed up in the head. And yeah, some of the blame lays at his feet. But this season, by and large, I say not on him. I mean, hell, a lot of the interceptions that he had, if you look back, were balls that either should have been caught by the offense or the receiver didn't know what the fuck they were doing and turned the wrong way on the route.
Yeah.
And I remember specifically in the first Bucks game with Dallas Goedert, where he should have been there to catch the ball, but he slipped and fell. And because he slipped and fell, he wasn't there to catch the ball. The Bucks receiver was there. And, that doesn't end up being an interception if Dallas can keep his footing. And I'm not saying, I'm not blaming Dallas for that either. It was the field was shitty. But there was a lot of that this year. And there was a lot of stuff like, they always say that the best teams in the league are the lucky teams because it's better to be lucky than good. And I feel like we're in 2022, every single break that could have gone the Eagles' way went the Eagles' way, with the
Right.
exception of the Super Bowl. This year was the complete opposite. This was course correction by luck, karma, whatever you want to call it, at its finest. And
That's
every single thing that could go wrong, every bounce that could go against the Eagles went against the Eagles.
a fair point.
And I'm not talking about refs. I'm not saying like, oh, the league was out to get the Eagles. No, it's not that at all.
No,
It was just like the universe was out to get.
Yeah, I think we could have that conversation if it was like a game or two.
Right.
Like, oh, it's got to be the refs. Got to be the refs.
Right.
No, this was obviously not that.
Yeah.
Now it's funny though. Watching the Bills Chiefs game tonight, and really, really like the Bills slot receiver, Khalil Shakir. Really think so. Anyway, they run several similar plays with him that are akin to what the Eagles try to do with these different screens and whatever, and it's just nothing's going on. But it made me think though, looking at the Eagles receiving core with AJ, Devontae, Goddard at tight end, your big three there. Well, but I mean, it obviously Julio Jones is done, and then you have Quez and Zacchaeus, whatever. Obviously, no one else really sparks interest. I would love just a good middle slot quick man. I think that would work really well with Jalen.
How do you feel about T. Higgins?
Oh, dude, give me T all day long.
Because that's the rumor I'm hearing.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
I like that one. I mean, they need it. They need it bad. Devontae's a great deep threat, and Devontae's a great, side route 20-yarder guy, whatever. AJ's AJ. He's going to catch everything no matter where he's out on the field. This is the way he is and built. Everyone else, unless you're Dallas Goedert catching your tight end, whatever stuff, receiver-wise is nothing to me for the Eagles. So you need that guy that's going to consistently catch the ball at that 8 to 10-yard mark. Just somebody. I would love to obviously, recreate a Wes Welker or one of those types. They can just catch everything. And it always seemed to me that like the best teams always had a guy like that. I watched that with the Bills tonight, even though they lost. But I see that with a lot of good teams, and it's like, man, we need someone like that.
So let me ask you this, and this is super hypothetical, and I feel like there's no way in hell this happens. But how do you feel about the Eagles trading a Dallas Goedert or another one of your offensive weapons to snag an extra number one pick, or even if it's a next year's one, and or some sort of package, and making it a situation where not only could you address your defensive backfield in the first round, but you could snag Brock Bowers.
Oh, well, that would be ridiculous. I would love it. I would love to take somebody that was, young and like him.
Because look,
it'd be crazy, but
let's be real here. I don't think there's a chance in hell that happens. I think Bowers is going to go definitely top 10, possibly top 6. But that skill set in this offense, if you could manage to keep Devontae and AJ, say we don't get Higgins, but think about Devontae Smith and AJ Brown lining up on the outside, and then splitting out Brock Bowers and having Dallas Goedert as your safety valve.
Oh, that'd be amazing. It would be amazing. Now, here's the scary thing, though, thinking about this year's draft, and we will do a more of a deep dive into the NFL draft, which we always do. The Bears, who lucked out like the most insane ever, they've got to go Harrison, right?
You would think.
I mean, that's the thing that I wonder. It's like, so they grab Harrison, and you already have DJ Moore, and you've got Justin Fields, who's really starting to come into his own as long as he can stay healthy and on the field.
Yeah.
I'm telling you, man, Harrison, if better college career than his dad, but if he's even anywhere near his dad professionally, he's going to be leading the league in receptions and yards next year.
Well, let's see if he can stay away from the guns, unlike his dad.
That's a fair point. All right, so before we close out just on all negative with the Eagles, and we'll see where that goes, and we will do our season preview at some point, obviously, as the year progresses, and we dig into the schedule and we'll see what happens in the offseason, whatever. We do need to talk about the fact that the Flyers are second in the division right now, which is insane.
Yeah. Flyers are second in the Metropolitan Division. They've got, I think the Rangers are ahead of them by like 2 points last I looked, but they've also got a couple games in hand. Now the Flyers are actually coming off of is it a 2-game losing streak? Yeah, two-game losing streak after winning 5 in a row. Dude, did you see the Owen Tippett goal from the other night?
I did not.
Holy shit! You need to, when we get off of the air, you need to look up. Just all you have to do is go to Google and type in Owen Tippett goal, and it'll fucking bring it up for you. And
I'll have to check it out.
He gets the puck, skates into the zone on the breakaway, does a spinorama, and at the end of the spinorama, he lifts the puck and just lofts it into the net over the goalie's shoulder. It was fucking insane. And this is one of the guys we got in return for Claude Giroux.
Oh, okay.
So, oh my God, it's a thing of beauty.
I just flipped it on right now, real quick. I'm checking this out. Wow, holy crap!
Right?
That's awesome.
Right?
Like he just completely spun it and backhanded it in there and carried it. That's crazy.
Yeah, he gets the toe to stick right under it and just kind of like whoop.
That is crazy.
So and the Flyer, they finally named their captain. Travis Konechny is TK himself, number 11, is the captain. So, we're finally rolling. Again, we came off a 5-game win streak. We lost 2 in a row now. Not even close. Well, tonight's game was close. But we had a 3-1 lead at one point today and ended up losing 5-4. So, not a great game. The game before last, we got shelled. It was like 7-2. Carter Hart got pulled from the game. Owen Tippett was hurt in that game. So I got to look and see how everybody's feeling today. But they've had their ups and downs. But dude, Torts has them rolling. He's got them playing really well. Still not, the rebuild isn't over just because but they have a really good chance of making the playoffs. And once you get into the NHL playoffs, man, once you get in, anything can happen.
Yeah, no, you're right. Other thing too, we'll just quickly just kind of brush on this. The Sixers are third in the Eastern Conference, 28-13, just behind the Celtics and the Bucks. So look, it's not like everything's completely piss poor right now in Philadelphia sports land.
Right.
Flyers, the Sixers.
Embiid.
Oh, he's ridiculous.
Shit. He is taking his game to a whole he was an MVP when he wasn't playing like this. So
yeah.
If he can play this just shows that the idea of addition through subtraction is real. You took James Harden off of this team, and holy shit, has Embiid just taken off.
Yeah, I've watched a little bit this year. Not a lot. I'm not a big NBA guy, but I do flick on the Sixers whenever I do have that TV access. And my goodness, yeah, he's just ridiculous.
Yeah,
every sense of the word. We opened up with a little conversation. The Phils are a month away, or a little less than a month away from pitchers and catchers reporting. Look, there was no major moves made as far as anything new. The re-signed who they re-signed. We'll get into this as spring training starts to come closer, and really, maybe it was the moves they didn't make that worked out. And I think we all fantasized about, oh yeah, maybe they can do Ohtani and they can do this and they can do that. Maybe this is just what they needed to do and not making anything. The only thing that's going to really make the sheer difference for them, into my eyes, are two things. One, young guys continuing to improve and continuing to step up, and that's not including who's already on the team, possibly some additions from the minors. And two, I just want to see a nice, full, healthy season of Harper. Yeah. And I think if we get that, this team's winning more ball games than they won the last 2 seasons.
Hey, who did Shoto end up signing with? Is he still floating out there? Because that could be the one big addition. Next to, obviously, I mean, the biggest news of this offseason, as we all know, is that Scott Kingery's back in camp on a non-roster tryout.
Right. Yeah, no kidding. Yeah, well, I mean, look, at the end of the day, here's the thing. The Kingery thing didn't work out, but at the end of the day, you had a utility guy on your team that you traded for the Pirates for named Rodolfo Castro last year, and you're telling me that couldn't have been Kingery at least?
Right.
Give me a break. That's to me, that's end up going to be his spot if he makes the team. I mean, because I believe everyone's coming back, really, for the most part.
Aside from Reese.
Yeah, well, yeah, we know that one, but he wasn't really there last year, so.
Yeah, it's true. But yeah, honestly, I think you're right. I think it's going to fall to the development. Hopefully no major injuries. Pitching staff, I think SI has us rated as like either somewhere in the top 3, I believe, pitching staffs in the league. Some outlets have us as the number 1 pitching staff in the league. So, it's really it's there.
Yeah, and we'll definitely, that's going to be a little little teaser. We'll definitely do that one up. There's still some time. Maybe they do make a move. So, anyhow, well, you know what the best thing though about last weekend was?
Oh, absolutely. The fucking Cowboys got knocked in their asses too because they're bitches.